Most people that are familiar with Meniere's disease know that it causes hearing loss, but what's not talked about a lot is what Meniere's disease adds to the hearing that you have left. So what's funny is the video you're about to watch, which describes how I hear music now, was shot on what I would call a good day. Right now, I'm in a window of a string of bad days where music right now is pretty much reduced to just rhythmic white noise that really doesn't have any tonality. And again, this could be my permanent reality. So what you're about to watch actually describes how I hear music on the days that I can use what I have left. So right now, music sounds awful to me. It happened on May 12th when I lost my second ear to Meniere's disease. And if you haven't watched my previous video, I'll put the link above so you can check that out. It explains kind of context for everything else I'm going to talk about today. So I thought I would explain why music sounds terrible right now. It's for multiple reasons, so here's just a handful of them. The first one is everything I'm hearing is definitely distorted. Now, when you think of the word distorted, we typically think of like a guitar player stepping on a distortion pedal. It sounds like it's clipping, right? It sounds crunchy. And I definitely have that going on. All incoming sounds are a little bit distorted. But that's not all. In the audio world, we referred to pitch shifting as also another type of distortion. Now, the funny thing is, I just wrote an article for Sound on Sound magazine at the end of last year about why I love distortion. I had no idea that this would end up being a problem. I can report that I no longer really love distortion, but it's kind of funny if you think about it. So in addition to things that I hear, everyday sounds sounding distorted, in the crunchy sense of the word, there's also a distortion of pitch that I have now. This is known as diplacusis, which I discovered is a thing, where your ears are hearing different pitches to the point where it sounds a little bit unsettling. Now, when I teach synthesis, we actually talk about how we use a little bit of a pitch difference to actually create a really cool effect. It's this effect called beating. It's this detuning technique that actually can thicken up sounds. Here's an example of how a little bit of pitch shift can actually sound, quote, good. So I've got this synth in Ableton Live dialed up to 2 sawtooth waves, and right now they're both tuned to the same exact pitch. So when I play this progression, it sounds okay. We can actually make it sound a lot thicker and more kind of rich by slightly offsetting the tuning by sense. Sense is just a measurement of a musical distance on a keyboard. To give you some context, every half step on the piano is the distance of 100 cents. A semitone equals 100 cents. It's a way to fine tune something. So if we adjust this top oscillator to push it up about 5 cents, and we take the bottom oscillator and we pull it down to about -5 cents, and now we listen to it. It's got this really cool kind of rich chorusy effect. In fact, anytime you're using like a chorus pedal or an effect, that's actually what's happening. It's adding another detuned voice. So right now, it kind of sounds cool and more rich as opposed to this, where it's just flat. So I teach this technique in synthesis class as a way to thicken up sound. So this thing called beating, it's a fluctuation in amplitude anytime you have 2 different pitches. So for example, if I hold down this note, you can hear, right, that fluctuation that's happening. When you tune an acoustic guitar by the harmonics, right, you can tell as long as there's that fluctuation, your strings aren't quite in tune yet. Same concept in synthesis, right? So we can hear that beating happening. As a result, if we were to make a really aggressive pitch difference, let's say we bump the first one up to 30 cents and the bottom one down to -30 cents, and now I hold down a note, the beating becomes faster and it's not pleasant to listen to. In fact, let's hear that with some chords. You're drunk, music. Go home. So now, take that concept and apply that across the wide spectrum of harmonics and, quote, notes that we hear in a song. Unfortunately, that's how music sounds to me right now. I've done some ear training day to day, and sometimes the pitch difference in my ears can be off anywhere from 30 cents to 60 cents and beyond, even sometimes up to a half step difference in each ear. As a result, I can actually physically feel that beating sensation. It kind of tickles my ears a little bit in a way that's not pleasant. Now, I used to at least have one good ear, and I could kind of rely on that, but now, unfortunately, that I've lost a second ear, I'm not even really hearing any true pitch anymore. From what I can tell from my training, even my second ear, which used to be my good ear, is now not really hearing that true pitch anymore. I also have kind of it's almost like like when I listen to music, it's like a very slow pitch modulation happens throughout the song. Kind of like if you're an audio nerd, if we took like an LFO, a really slow sine wave LFO, and applied it to pitch across the whole mix. It's super unsettling. Sometimes even listening to basic waveforms are hard for me. Like I can switch between a sine wave and a sawtooth wave, and because of the brightness and harmonics, it can actually flip by a distance of up to a half step just by flipping the waveform. I also have really annoying resonances. So it's like I have pitches that are being added to everything that I'm hearing. And sometimes they can be as far away as a half step, and sometimes, from what I can tell, they can be as far off as a third. And so all incoming sounds, be it music, be it a talking voice, like right now, my voice sounds like a robot, a distorted robot that has an additional pitch on top. So here's just an example from a clip of music here, without any resonances applied. But on any given day for me, with my added resonances, it could sound like this. And, the thing that stinks is it's not predictable. And sometimes the resonances are musically pleasant. They're at, like, intervals that make sense. And sometimes they're totally random. And they're attached to anything from the garbage truck driving by on the street to my husband talking to me to, again, music. The other thing that's happening because of these overtones is, I can listen to a song like, for example, Where the Streets Have No Name by U2. I know that song front to back like the back of my hand. So I know the bass player, I know all the parts of that song where he rides the one, but now with these added overtones, sometimes it sounds like he's riding the 6 or even the 7, when I know he's supposed to be riding the 1. I also have a loss of low end. This is pretty textbook for Meniere's disease sufferers, where, normally when people get older, they, as a result of aging, they lose some high end hearing. But with Meniere's, you actually lose low end. So things start to really fall off for me about 1K. So right now when I listen to a song, it kind of sounds like a busted AM radio. I'm really not hearing any low end, to the point where I can barely make out the top kind of fundamental of a bass line, but I really can't recognize the timbre whatsoever. Now, at first I thought, okay, I'm going to study my hearing tests, and I'm going to figure out where my deficiencies are, and figure out EQ settings, and I don't know, flipping phases or something, and try to hack my way so that I can listen to things in a way that makes sense to my ears. But the problem is, again, it's unpredictable. I never know. One day, my right ear might be hearing overtones, and maybe I can make out things a little more clearly, but then the next day, it could be totally the opposite. So yeah, right now, music is very unsettling. And unfortunately, most people with Meniere's disease that develop this, some of them, it becomes a permanent feature, unfortunately. I don't know. For me, it's been about 5 weeks now, and I'm still not sure if I'm going to get this ability to at least be able to hear music, quote, correctly enough to be able to assess it. We still don't know what's going to happen. Now, it's possible that maybe I can retrain my brain to at least try to enjoy music as a listener. Right now, music is physically a little unsettling, and it just doesn't sound great. And part of it, unfortunately, is because I'm trained. And so, of course, it's not going to sound good. So I'm hoping while I at least have enough hearing, I can maybe retrain my brain over the next, couple of years to be able to appreciate music as a listener in its new state. I'm hoping I can physically train myself to endure that fluctuation of amplitude so that it doesn't feel as unsettling as it does right now. And again, this wouldn't be so bad if I had at least one kind of good ear to rely on, but I can't trust either. So even if I could maybe just listen to music with one ear and have it be somewhat pleasant, that would be awesome. But the problem is it's unpleasant even if I isolate an ear. So right now, music and I are kind of on a break. For me, music is mainly important because of the emotional support I get from it, and I'll do another video on that. I picked my top 11 songs that I really want to try to develop a memory of, so that if I do lose even more and more hearing, I'm hoping I can preserve that time capsule. Obviously, the most challenging component of all of this for me is the emotional component. This has been really painful to deal with, and I'll talk about that in other videos. So stick around, more to come.